this is Jen with another Reddit story for you. Well, this one isn't so much a Reddit story as much as it was just someone coming on and asking a question, which I thought was a great question, especially if you have an adolescent that you think might be struggling with substance abuse or alcohol or something like that. So the question is, parents of children who were or are addicted to drugs or alcohol, what were the warning signs in adolescence? Great question. Sometimes it's really hard because their addiction doesn't really fully develop until they get maybe into their 20s, but you start seeing signs way sooner than that. And so I think this is a good question to read and look at some of these answers. So one of the answers was, I learned it was Xanax. He would sleep for hours and hours every day. I would start to force him to go out with the family because I felt something wasn't right. I knew right away it was some type of drug. Slurred speech, and sometimes wouldn't be able to walk correctly. He even would forget conversations that we were talking about in the moment. A month prior, he was completely normal. It became pretty obvious to me. Told him I knew he was on drugs, and what we got him, and we got some help and rehab. Honestly, I'm going to say, yes, I think large quantities of Xanax will do this, but based on what I'm reading, it almost sounds like maybe there was something more going on, but I'm so glad that they got help, with rehab. I hope that worked out. Let's see. This is one from a child, a kid that she says, I am the child, struggled with alcohol addiction as a young adult. Warning signs were the desire to indulge, chocolate, sugar, rides, again, and more all the time. Also, untreated anxiety. Started medicating anxiety and PTSD with alcohol. I struggle with more and more aspects of drinking. Yeah, so that's that is one of the warning signs. I'm glad this person said that, because there is an overindulgence. It doesn't have to necessarily be with drugs. We can, and I say we because I'm in recovery myself, we can turn just about anything into an addiction. It doesn't have to just be drugs. It could be overindulgence. I know some people in recovery, a lot of times when they get into recovery, they get really heavy into exercising. And I wish that was my thing personally. I wish that I had gotten addicted to exercising if I had to find a vice. I wish that was the one that I picked, but mine is food, especially sugar. But just food in general, I will overindulge. So that can absolutely be one of the warning signs in adolescence, that they have the tendency to just overindulge on things. Let's see. One of the responses to that was spot on. An alcoholic, and impulse control was not my thing. Also lots of anxiety. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. With my brother, it started as a toddler. It was a compulsion to do the opposite of what he was told and to blame everyone else for his choices. And this is as a toddler. Tell him to stop doing something and he'd keep doing it. Tell him to do something and he'd refuse. If someone tried to talk to him or held him responsible, they were the problem. My theory was that he started doing drugs and drinking because so many people told him it wasn't good for him to do. When my brother was a kid, he failed most of his classes. His projects and assignments weren't done, but he blamed his teachers. He couldn't get to class on time, but that was not his fault. My mom didn't wake him up. She was at work early, and he was 17 and capable of getting to school himself. He was in trouble all the time, but that was because of the principal and other kids. He dragged other people down with him, and he got caught. He got himself expelled and some other kids suspended. Surprise, surprise. He was on drugs. Now you can tell when he is using again because his life falls apart quickly. As soon as he got stable income, he starts using again. He complains when the landlord is upset the rent wasn't paid on time again, but the landlord is the problem. When his boss wants him somewhere on time, but he was late, the boss is the problem. He speeds. When he's pulled over for the millionth time, the cops are the problem. He can't hold down a job, keep his driver's license, keep a good relationship with his kids, or stay in one location because he can't do what's expected of him for long, and he still drags others down with him. He got an entire construction crew fired 2 years ago because he fought a guy who called him out on being high on the job. And he was, but as usual, according to my brother, it was that other guy who has the problem. Listen, that is a huge warning flag, honestly. And there's so many other comments to this, but I'll stop with that comment and just kind of say the lack of taking responsibility for any actions is a huge warning sign, because that does start happening a lot earlier on than the substances sometimes take place. It's the world has a problem with me, not that I have a problem, with the world and I need to look at my actions. It's always someone else's fault. And it is absolutely a huge warning sign. I think what this person was asking, though, was just kind of like, what are they looking for if someone is high too? And that can be a very different thing depending on what drugs. So like if they seem a little bit more twitchy and anxious, it's probably some kind of upper. If they seem really kind of down, sleepy all the time, that's going to be maybe somewhere in the lines of some type of opiate, maybe a barbiturate, Xanax, those kinds of things. And sometimes it's interesting because some drugs impact other people differently. So I'll just give you an example. When I used to get high on heroin, that would bring me right down. But for some people, it would actually increase their energy levels. They would get really hyper, and that was not my story. So it was interesting to see, even amongst us drug users, how different drugs would impact other people, because it would be different sometimes. But those are kind of like some of your warning signs. Here's the biggest thing. Denial is strong in parents. Denial is strong. So if you suspect something, there is a reason. Trust that, whatever the warning sign is, because this is something that we're not actually looking for necessarily. It's something we don't want to have to deal with. So if we're seeing it, if it's right in front of us, it's probably whatever it is that you think that it is, you're probably spot on. Maybe not in entirety, but you know that something is going on and you know that it needs to be addressed. And I would trust that instinct more than what are the warning signs and what are they doing. It's more of just like, there is something going on that needs my attention. Trust that. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll be back with another story.